Hello and welcome back to the AFL High Performance Podcast. My name is Jack McLean. I'm your host, and today I'm lucky enough to be joined by Rich Johnston, who is our guest, and we're discussing everything that you need to know that when it comes to AI in professional sports. So we've got some good insights. I've reached out to a few sports scientists in the industry, so looking forward to. Oh, sorry, just had a bit of audio overplaying there. Yeah, looking forward to diving into something we haven't discussed yet on the podcast. But welcome, Rich. Thanks for jumping on, mate.
Thanks for having me, Jack.
No doubt those listening in that are enthusiastic about the topic of AI and high performance sport are well aware of your background, mate. But for those tuning in that aren't aware of how it all started, I guess for you, do you mind providing a bit of a background on your passion for high performance sport and different experiences you've had along the way?
Yeah, no worries. So, yeah, I grew up in the north of England, and I moved out to Australia when I was 24. I was basically for 3 years, and I've been here since. But I guess during my formative years, I guess like most people listening here, played sport. Um, Generally, I played as many things as I could, some better than others. And then I guess fell into sports science through not being good enough to play any of those sports professionally, but yeah, soccer or football, cricket, and rugby league is what I played growing up. Um, and I always liked the training side of things and pushing myself um, and yeah, pushing my body as hard as I could and I guess like understanding how your body adapted and changed to stress. I always found that really interesting. I actually remember going to a went to a football game, a Tottenham Hotspur versus Arsenal game when I reckon I would have been about 11 or 12, and we were sat maybe 3 or 4 rows back, and it was the Arsenal team that had sort of Thierry Henry, Vieira, Petit, I think, sort of when they went and won that invincible season where they won the Premier League unbeaten, and they were warming up in front of us, jumping over hurdles and stuff like that. This would have been back, yeah, early 2000s, or maybe even 2000, and these guys are jumping over these hurdles, and you just watch these guys and just like absolute racehorses, like the most finely tuned athletes you'd ever see. And I think that sort of like really opened up my eyes to like, oh wow, this is yeah pretty impressive what you can get like a human to be able to do. And I guess Premier League football players, they've come through a big meat grinder, and it's only the very best that you see out there on the field. But yeah, that sort of I guess ignited interest in training and understanding how people can adapt to training. And then I went and did sports science at uni. Again, that was probably driven by the fact that I enjoyed playing sport mainly. Um, and then during that, I really enjoyed like the physiology, understanding what happened to your body when you exercise acutely and chronically. And then I always thought I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. So I went and did a master's in strength and conditioning at the University of Edinburgh up in Scotland. And that was a really great course and really enjoyed that. I think there was only a couple of sports or strength and conditioning masters around at that time. There was the one at Edith Cowan, which I nearly went and did, and then I went and did the one at Edinburgh. Um, and yeah, really enjoyed that. And during that time, I did some work with Scotland Rugby as sort of an internship, and that was sort of the first real exposure to a high performance sporting environment. Because my undergrad degree didn't really expose us to much. We did some stuff with Birmingham City Football Club, but that was about it. And then otherwise didn't expose me much to much high performance environments from a sporting side of things. So yeah, that Scottish rugby with a guy called Neil Potts was really really good for me and sort of showed you the inner workings of how professional rugby setup was. And then I did some stuff with Scotland Rugby as well during the Six Nations, which was yeah, really cool experience. Again, all unpaid stuff. And then after my masters, I applied for a job at Hearts Football Club with a guy called Neil Gibson, who's yeah, a real good friend of mine still. And I got that job um, and worked there for 18 months, just whilst I was finishing my master's. Oh no, it wasn't 18 months, it was about 2 years in the end, whilst I was finishing my master's. And yeah, really enjoyed that experience. But I guess one of the big sliding doors moments was when I was doing my master's at Edinburgh. I had to do a thesis, and I was reading some rugby league literature, and Tim Gabbett, who was sort of the guy pushing out most of the research in that space in rugby league, had some things for future research. So I just emailed him on the off chance, and he actually replied to me saying that one of his students was currently doing that project, but he'd be happy to supervise me um, for my master's. Which I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool because he has no clue who I am, and he's taken a punt on me. But it really sort of highlighted like just don't be afraid to speak to people and try and develop your network and you realize that most people, and you know it more and more as you go through your career, is most people are just happy to chat with you and will give you time, as particularly if you're passionate and conscientious um, and respectful of people's time. Yeah, most people are happy to have a chat with you, and the worst thing they're going to say is no, and you're
Mm.
no worse off. Um, so yeah, then we actually did that master's project. Looking back at it, I would have done stuff differently now, but it was a great learning experience. We did repeated effort stuff and versus repeated sprints. So repeated sprints with tackles in between, and then repeated sprints, and looked at sort of the physiological cost of those two activities, really highlighting that I guess the contact is really drives a lot of the physical load that these, I guess, rugby league athletes are exposed to, and that sort of started my journey in rugby league research, and particularly in around the contact side of the sport. Yeah, me and Tim stayed in touch, and then after a couple of years, I thought I want to do a PhD. Didn't know I wanted to do a PhD. Never thought I'd want to go. I thought I wanted to be a practitioner my whole life. Um, but yeah, really enjoyed like the research and the data and answering questions. Like you get all these numbers in, you don't know what they mean at the start, and then it's trying to tell a story with that data. And I guess that's will bring us on to today's conversation. So yeah, that was so then yeah, I applied for a PhD, a couple in the UK that I didn't get them, and then I applied for a couple of scholarships here in Australia, and luckily got offered a couple of positions and took the one at ACU. That was back in 2012. So me and my now wife moved out here in 2012. Yeah, with nothing, like a couple of suitcases, and here we are. Yeah, of 13, 14 years later now, with two little kids. So yeah, it's amazing how those sort of that one email that I sent to Tim has, yeah, I guess changed the way you changed the way my life has or career has taken, and life as well, because we moved to the other side of the world. So and yeah, then I've been at ACU for, yeah, like I said, I finished up PhD in 2015, been at ACU since then. And now an associate professor here and supervise research students mainly. And then we have a couple of grants. We've got one big bit of work that we do with the NRL, and then another one just starting as well, around concussion as well. So I guess rugby league and tackling sort of where my and fatigue is sort of where my PhD lay, and then that's sort of, I guess, the way that contact sports have evolved over recent years. A lot of that work is now in concussion and I guess player safety and welfare, but it's always in that tricky position between sanitizing the game and keeping it authentic as well, because that's what took me to the sport. And yeah, I guess the playing rugby league as a kid and playing it through my young adulthood, like the opportunities it's given me have been amazing. And it's I wouldn't want to change it for to see it become something that it's not. So yeah, that's sort of the work that we do now, which is, I guess, challenging and exciting as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's yeah, some great tips there. We had a event recently at the club, and there was a few TAFE students, looking doing sports management and interested in sports science, and around the table, that was from those experienced in the industry. That was a pretty take-home message, I think, was how open people are to helping you out, and yeah, like the worst case scenario is that you get no, but majority of the time you're going to get something out of making that conversation. Like you said, it was sort of a pivotal moment in your career and taking you are now. Yeah, fantastic. Tim Gabbett, that's yeah, household name in sports science. So
Yeah,
we'll,
it is.
we'll dive straight in because, like we talked off air, that yeah, the first question you could spend a whole hour on. So mindful of time, mate, and your time, of course, with everything you got going on. But I guess yeah, the topic AI, there's many different streams that we can go into, but for specifically elite sport, I guess what are the different forms that, for someone like yourself that's got finger on the pulse, particularly in NRL, what are the common forms at the moment that people are using AI to assist their workflows and effectiveness, I guess, in making an impact in high performance?
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess when everyone thinks about AI, probably think straight to like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, one of those sort of language models. And I don't know what's 3 years maybe they've been around for now. But I guess AI as a whole it's a computer trying to mimic what a human can do. So that could be anything from like a decision tree to these generative AI models, large language models, deep learning, computer vision sort of sits within there, machine learning. And some of these things have been around for a long time, like some of these machine learning models, like a random forest, for example, they've sort of been developed in the early 2000s. And I guess the one thing that's been a handbrake on them has been computing power and sort of with the advent of cloud computing and bigger, more powerful computers that the AI has, I guess, skyrocketed in the last few years. So, yeah, if you think about it, AI is everything. Machine learning will be within there. Within that, there's sort of these deep neural networks, which a lot of the GPT models run off these deep neural networks, and in particular, large language models that allow you to. So what ChatGPT does basically is when you write a prompt for it, it recognizes not just letters, but it recognizes words and the sequences of those words and what they sort of mean. And it's able to do that simultaneously, which has been, I guess, the big step forward. And from there, it can then understand those patterns and how that all those words link together and what that means in all these layers of a neural network, to allow it to then pull on information with it that it can get from the internet or from your files, depending on the type of AI model that you're using. So I guess specifically within sport, probably one of the biggest and I guess well-researched areas of AI use is in computer vision and player tracking. So things like Hawkeye have been around for a long time now. And I guess that's probably one of the most common ones we see when we're watching broadcast footage of the tennis or cricket is Hawkeye being used. And again, that's using computer vision. But there's some other pretty cool ones out there now as well that use broadcast footage to try and do player tracking. And we've done some work in that space now with some of the guys at FIFA that Grant Duffy has led here. And yeah, Grant's a great guy. He's been really helpful for me across my career. And yeah, some of these broadcast, so these companies will just use broadcast footage to track where a player is in space. If they run out of shot, they'll then try and estimate where that player is. And they use that using massive training sets of, okay, if this player goes out of shot, but we can see 3 other players and we know the ball's over here, we can estimate where that person's position is, and how far they've moved. So the accuracy is a lot lower when they do go out of shot, but when they're in shot, the accuracy is actually pretty high just from broadcast footage, whether it be exactly what we see on TV, or there are sort of fixed cameras that might be in the stadium that sort of capture everything, and we wouldn't generally watch that on telly. But yeah, actually amazing how accurate they are when someone's in shot. It's when they're out of shot that the accuracy degrades slightly. But that's only going to improve. Like the more and more data these models can learn from, the accuracy improves. And I think if anyone's out there using GPT models, so ChatGPT or Copilot, they sort of understand how much better they are now than they were like 2 or 3 years ago. These hallucinations that it gets, they don't seem to happen as much anymore. So I guess that's where AI is, and that's where it's done really well. There's some pretty cool applications in endurance sports, actually, sort of these adaptive program designs and AI coaches. So if you're like I think there's apps called Runner. There's some cycling ones as well, and I think they do pretty well in that space where the number of variables that they need to capture the training dose are not that great. So,
Mm.
for example, if you go on a bike ride and you've got a power meter and a heart rate monitor, and a computer, you know what their speed was, what their power output was, what their heart rate response was. You're almost capturing everything you need to know about that athlete and then you can start to these big models can then start to predict what your response should be for that speed or that load. Oh, actually, your heart rate was up here, or there was a greater training effect from that session. You maybe need a lighter session the next day. And imagine if you've trained for 5 or 6 years, you've got thousands of sessions in there. It can go back to a session 2 years ago or use all that information and say, based on that session and based on what you've done before, you should have responded like this, but you actually responded with a greater heart rate response, or you couldn't get your heart rate as high. Something might be going on. Tomorrow, we're going to adapt your training session based on that. So there are some pretty cool applications, and I think that is only going to improve. Whereas I guess if you're a coach, it's very, very hard for you to make a really accurate decision based on 6 years worth of training data for that athlete. So that's, I think, where they have power in those sports, particularly where, like I said, you can explain or capture performance fairly easily. Now, if you're working in team sports and you've got 35 players all doing different things, all different body shapes, all different body types, sorry, all different injury histories, different positions, different fiber typologies. That's when it becomes very, very tricky to be able to predict performance or predict injury. But I think that the computer vision for tracking is useful, and we see it now, and it's only going to improve. I think there's some of those adaptive, individualized program designs are pretty interesting from endurance sports. Pose recognition, so like digitizing people so that you can create a skeleton from. So some of the work we've done has been looking at one of my PhD students, Laura Dunn, did a project where she's got we know that people's gait changes after a concussion, and there's been lots of lab studies that have shown that, and it may last for months. And some people have even shown, like if you even present with a history of concussion, you have a different gait signature to someone that doesn't. But obviously, it's all been in labs, and we thought, okay, can we take that out into the field? And some of Ben Horsley's work, Laura was sort of doing it alongside Ben, sort of capturing these gait characteristics. Can we do it with the IMU that's in the thoracic mounted StatSport or Catapult device, whatever you're using? And the answer is yes, you can capture it pretty reliably, and it also shows it can capture these key gait metrics, and it can capture that over and you can show that there's changes over time post concussion. But obviously, that opens the door for people that have access to GPS units and IMUs, which is a lot of people. But there's there's a community level, like how can we use an iPhone camera maybe to capture gait characteristics? And that's where there are some applications now. There's things like Open Pose, where you can take a video and put it into Open Pose, and it can give you basically draw a 2D skeleton of someone, and you can capture the major joints. And I think some of this markerless motion capture is gonna develop, and then getting joint kinematics out, stride time, stride length, stride frequency is going to become more and more prevalent, so that you don't have to go into a lab and use Vicon. And there's companies like VuMotion that are doing it already. But you still have to set up things for VuMotion. Like, I think, and that's a lot of our work is now, like, how can we use the tech that we already have to capture stuff on the fly and without having to intervene or without having to have a testing session? So we got pretty powerful technology there, and it is only becoming more and more powerful. How can we use that to make decisions proactively rather than reactively? I think is the big thing moving forward. So yeah, I think this computer vision is only going to progress. I've always thought like within the gym, like if you're, let's say you're using a position transducer to count sets and reps, there's a lot of like manual entry in the gym. Like this was the load, this was the distance, bar travel. Like again, that's really hard to capture unless you're using a position transducer like a gym aware. Um, but I've always thought like, can't we just have a camera up in the corner of the gym? And there might be companies doing this now. Camera up in the corner of the gym, like a pixel wide angle lens that captures everything, and
Mhm.
it can see Jack McLean over there doing a bench press. It can see that he's got 100 kilos on the bar, and he can see that he's done those reps at a certain speed, and the bars move this far. From that, we can calculate the amount of force he's produced, the amount of mechanical work he's done. Over there, he's now doing dumbbell lunges with 20-kilo dumbbells in each hand. He's only done 6 reps, and then he's dropped it to a 15-kilo dumbbell the next set. Like, I think we can get to that, and I don't think that is that far off. And there might be companies that are already doing that. So I think, yeah, that is going to be even like facial recognition. Like, oh, Jack's come up to the to the force platform today, but based on the camera from his face, or he does a wellness thing on his iPhone, like his face looks tired. He's and there's been like facial recognition cameras for years now, and your iPhone camera's powerful enough to do these kind of things. So there are some companies looking at that now, and um, how that relates um, to performance and fatigue monitoring. I think is going to be things that open up like heart rate for biofeedback that you can capture from your phone with a fair degree of validity. And again, like whilst the if you compare it to a lab-based test, it might not be perfect, but the amount of sort of the noise might be higher, but the signal you can capture from the data just increases massively. And therefore that signal then eventually outweighs the noise. If you can capture something every single day, yes, it might not be under perfect lab-based conditions. We still need to be really mindful, and I'll talk about this a bit later on. We need to be really mindful on like how we capture data because it needs to be done correctly and consistently to ensure that there's integrity in your data and therefore you actually can make decisions off it. But I think the volume of data that we're going to be able to get from various sources is going to be yeah, it's ever evolving. I speak to high performance managers and they get calls every couple of days from tech companies trying to sell something. So there definitely needs to be some kind of and it is hard because you don't there's always these like investment readiness level and technology readiness level. You get these big companies who's got a lot of money, but the investment readiness level is really high, but the technology readiness level is low, but they've just got the ability to go out there and push it and sell it, and that's when it gets into places, and eventually the tech actually might and the evidence might catch up, and obviously that's often the case is that the innovators and the tech is often before the research has been done on it to understand like okay that is actually effective and it is valid and it is reliable and it can provide you with useful insights. um yeah, I realize I've rambled a fair bit there, but hopefully some useful snippets.
I think you can tell with the conversations you're having and where it's going is it's trying to gather reliable information almost just by through training, or playing the game and using that as the test rather than setting up your cones and doing your 10-5. You're just
Yeah,
using training with vision, GPS, and all the things that the players are already using
yeah,
to get better information more regularly. Um, where do you think in terms of like it's less invasive in terms of for the athletes, hopefully they're not needing to fill out certain things as much anymore, less questionnaires, they're wearing devices that gets all this information, but do you think in years to come it's going to be a privacy issue with wellness and or
yeah,
face recognition and all these things of like probably knowing like there's no hiding
yeah,
literally,
100%, 100%. And I guess it's the same for it's not just isolated to sport, is it? It's everything.
which maybe
Every,
that's just part of the caper of being a professional athlete. It's all for them to perform at a high level and be more available. And
yeah,
that's what trends is. So.
but yeah, but there definitely needs to be some guardrails on these types of things. And there's always wranglings between whether, depending on the sport, of who owns the data. Is it the club? Is it is it the sport? Is it the player themselves? I know in America a lot of the time it's the player that owns the data, and therefore it actually becomes quite restrictive on the ability to do research, which can be detrimental as well.
Mm.
In the maybe the long run, because yeah, we now see some of the work we're doing with the NRL is using the data across the whole competition, which then actually can be, and I'm hoping it's going to be actually be pretty powerful for practitioners, because let's say you want to know risk factors for a hamstring injury, you can't do that in your own club because you don't have enough data.
Mm.
Whereas if it's across the competition and you've got every single player across lots of every single position across every single age range and they've had hamstring injuries, then you can start to work out, okay, we've got enough in here to be able to maybe do some predictive modeling and do some predictions of what are the key risk factors for this injury, and that's when it starts to be, and that's when you end up improving player welfare. So, but yeah, still, like, there's data everywhere, and we were just down at Hot Shots Tennis the other day, and you're signing your daughter up, and they're asking about, like, oh, can you use this and can you use that? You got to consent to it to be able to get onto the program, and yeah, you start to wonder where does their image and go if they're taking pictures, and I guess as parents, you start to think about that privacy issue more so, and I guess in my work as well, it's always the privacy of the player and the athlete, and the ethical considerations that we have to go through to make sure that we're collecting things properly and managing data and storing it properly is really key. And I think anyone out there working with these types of data and large amounts of data would be going and understanding how to collect and manage data. So fair principles of data. So understanding how you should store it, how you should name things, so that it's recognizable to other people or other people that come into the club, whilst maintaining the privacy of the athlete is really key. And it does become blurry as well when it's performance data or medical data of an athlete at a club. So and yeah, that is going to become even more challenging moving forward. But I think as long as we can understand, and everything, I think everything we do needs to be, does it actually improve the performance of the team, or does it allow us to score more tries, or does it allow this player to be on the field for longer? And I think if you can answer those questions as a practitioner, then it might be worthwhile collecting that data. And I guess it's understanding all these risks and rewards, isn't it? The cost benefit of everything we do. Does it actually benefit the program and the athlete at the end of the day? Because that's what we all care about, is, will this athlete, and everyone does, even when you're working with a big organization and everyone has their own KPIs, at the end of the day, we want that athlete to be on the field for as long as possible, because that's better for everyone. If you're thinking about the best athletes in the game, whether it be a Lionel Messi or a Reece Walsh, you want them to be on the field, because that's what gets bums on seats, and that's what helps the game overall. So it's a win-win for everyone. But yeah, we still need to be thinking about, if we catch this data on this person, does it actually improve things for them? Yeah, there are some, actually, the ASC, so the Australian Sports Commission. If you go on the AS website, they have some good things about sort of roadmaps for AI use in sport, and sort of policies and procedures. And again, it's an evolving thing, isn't it? And sometimes the cart is before the horse, and it's sometimes catch up for these government agencies and policymakers to get things in place, to make sure that everything is done properly. Again, if I'm using I don't actually use ChatGPT anymore. I use Copilot completely, because it has privacy. We have an enterprise agreement at work with Copilot, which is Microsoft 365. So if I put data on there, it never goes anywhere else. Whereas ChatGPT, if you put data on there, and I tell people never put any data on ChatGPT. If you're asking it to help you with your coding or something, just say, I've got these columns. How do I get to this? And then you put that into your code. Whereas Whereas Copilot, the version that we have at work now, is it can look inward, so it can look at my files and it can look outward as well, which is actually really useful from a an efficiency point of view. Like I can come in on a Monday and ask it to prepare my week for me. So what does my week look like? Can you prepare me for all my meetings? Some of those meetings might have attachments, so it might say that you got a meeting with Jack on Thursday. These are the attachments. These are the things you maybe need to have a look at. Give me an hour. We estimate it's going to take an hour of your time, so it can start to plan your day, and you can actually run these prompts on a schedule as well. So I could get it to run that. I could save that prompt, so every time I start typing it, it'll come up. Or you can just get it to run on a schedule. So prepare me for my week and do that every Sunday night and send me an email, so that it's and again, that is like efficiency saving. And I think that's where these, particularly the large language models, is like improving your efficiency, whatever work you're doing. So yeah, prepare me for my week. And things like summarize this document for me. Another good one is like I never have enough time to read papers, so I have a to read folder which just gets bigger and bigger. So like summarizing those research papers, can you go into this folder, summarize all these research papers for me? And then there might be something that I don't understand, or you can go back and ask it. If people use Google, I don't actually use it. There's a one called Notebook LM, which again is like a language model, but you basically create resources for it.
Mhm.
So yeah, you might have a load of to read papers that are on velocity-based training or something like that, and it can actually go in there and create a podcast for you on velocity-based training. And you can even ask it questions halfway through the podcast. You're like, oh, I didn't understand that. Can you just go back and clarify that for me?
It's
Or
an interactive audio.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's pretty cool.
Mm.
And I think that, like, you could do that in the car as you're driving.
Mm.
So I think things like that where they can just improve efficiencies is really key for these language models for people. And just drafting emails is great at doing things like that. But again, it still needs someone to like check over it, and a human to be the person who's signing off on things and checking that it's useful. And I don't know, we spoke about this one off air, but the big thing for me was coding. Like before AI, you'd have a problem with your code and you'd type a message into Google and it comes up with various forums of um, Stack Overflow is probably the biggest one. I don't even know if Stack Overflow is still going these days, but um, you'd be like, I've got this problem, it won't work. And then you'd be like, oh, someone here has got a similar problem, but they're working in geology, for example. So they're talking about rocks instead of athletes. So you're like, okay, I can sort of work this out, and but you might be like, it's not right, and it will get you to 60% of your problem, and then you've got to work out the other 40%, or you pull in another bit from another forum that found another thing, and you eventually have something that works. But it might take you a day to do that, or 2 days. And then yeah, since AI, like it just comes out and you go, okay, here's an error in my code, correct it for me, and it'll be like, oh, here's the problem, bang, done. And like even when it was even 2 years ago, it's so much better at doing that now, because it's got so much more data to learn off, and yeah, these models are more clever than they were a couple of years ago. I don't know where we are on the curve of like how powerful these things are. Are we still on the steep part of the curve? I suspect we are, and how far up is it going to go? Yeah, it's sort of amazing to think about, and I know there's some trepidation of these machines are going to steal our jobs, and I think they will sort of in certain workspaces where things could be done by a machine more effectively, could be automated. That is going to happen, but it also might free up people to then do more impactful work. So if you think about a sports scientist, a footy club, maybe they spend a lot of time setting up the GPS units, if they're collecting wellness data, generating reports, downloading them, generating the reports, and then providing insights to the coach. And imagine if that all can be done through AI, and you're just there
Mm.
at certain checkpoints to run the session live, check who's doing what, but yeah, imagine if you get a prompt saying halfway through the session, oh, Jack has actually done more high speed running than he's done over the last 3 weeks. You might want to go and speak to the high performance manager there. Like getting these
Mm.
insights on the fly as data's coming off the units, going to your database. Like that is where it's gonna be, and that only supports decision making. Um, and again, like if you could ask your model how much high speed running is after the session, how much high speed running has Jack done over the last 3 weeks, and um, it might come back with something that's useful for you. And I think so. I think that's where it is going to go. And agentic AI is probably the big thing coming through now. So, like if I ask ChatGPT or Copilot a question, it'll give me an answer. Um, but an agent, so you can create these agents, or there are actually agents already on there. It can do things for you. So it might be able to go out there and send an email or draft an email for you and then send it, or it can generate a report for you based on. So you go, okay, there's new data coming into Databricks or Azure, whatever, AWS, whatever you're using the API, flow through this workflow, pull in stuff from Smarterbase, generate this report based on these factors, and create me a table that shows the summary of this guy's sessions versus his last 4 weeks, or and like bringing in data from other sources. And I think that's where I guess these models can be powerful, and where agentic AI can be powerful. And people are moving to like cloud computing where they've got all their stuff on AWS. So you've got stuff from Vault, you've got stuff from Smarterbase, you've got wellness stuff, you've got video on there from matches, you've got stats perform data in there, or champion data, whoever the stats provider is for the competition. You've got GPS data in there. And I think um, being and medical data, like how do they all talk to each other? Um, and that's where it can become um, powerful. And
So that was
that's
agentic
yeah.
AI, was it?
So agent and then IC on the end.
I see. Yeah.
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 So that's sort of basically you creating an agent. Imagine your little PA basically that can do things
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
generate a report for me from this session, and then bang, it can do it for you. And it might be like, oh, I don't like that bit of the report, change it to this, and it can then go away and do that. Or it might be you might say, give me three options, three different reporting types, and you could go to the coach, and he'd be like, yes, I like this one, or can you add this into here? And so you can do that sort of stuff already with Copilot. If you have like the enterprise, which runs off GPT-5, so it runs off the same model as ChatGPT if you have the paid version. Um,
Hmm.
so you can do some of this stuff already. And I've tried it. Like if it's got like I was with one of my PhD students recently, and I said I'll go and summarize a PhD thesis in 10 dot points, and it goes into it finds the file, it does it for you, and you're like, okay, that is actually spot on. Um, and and now it can like go into your emails as well. So I was sending someone an email of the rugby league positions the other day, and normally I'd have to type that out. I can just press Command L, Copilot pops up, give me the list of all the rugby league positions. It just does it within your email. So just things like that just save you five
It's all
minutes of your
integrated.
time. Yeah, it's all integrated,
Yeah.
and that integration is only going to increase more and more so
Everyone's got
moving
their own.
forward.
Everyone's got their own assistant now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think that is gonna help people. And yeah, imagine if it can do all that for you. So again, this always frustrates me. Like people think a sports scientist is like a GPS collector. Like that is
Mm.
not a sports scientist. Sports scientist is someone who can make insights out of the data that they collect and understand what they mean. And you do find that quite a lot with sort of young practitioners, is that they're good at collecting the data, creating nice reports and Power BI visuals, but you like really challenge them on, okay, what does that data mean? What does this mean for this athlete? What should I do here? Like that's when they sometimes struggle. So if you can have them, because they don't probably don't spend much time doing that, but if you can have them more forward facing, talking to athletes, talking to coaches, it's only a good thing. You're freeing up someone in the organization who probably is quite smart to be able to do other things that are going to add value. I think is only a good thing.
So going back to the high speed sort of example, um, have you had practitioners that have used it for maybe they've mapped out their pre-season individual loadings for maybe the most important players or the whole squad for those key metrics, whether it be distance, high speed running, very high speed running, maybe speed exposures, accel, decel sort of things. And then they're getting live feedback on players that might be going above that plan live in session
Yeah, I haven't.
or giving maybe if you give them thresholds of
Yeah,
minimum maximum targets and that sort of thing.
I mean, people would have them out there manually, hey, and they're just either they're checking them on the fly, or they know that Jack needs to do 4 high speed exposures this session based on what he's done before. Um, and I guess those things are quite easy to monitor as you go. You can see he's done this amount, but yeah, imagine if that can just be augmented and done without you having to actually go and check it.
Mm.
So but I don't know anyone who's really doing that at the moment, and I'm sure there would be people out there that are using um, some kind of language model to be able to do that on the fly as they go, and whether the some of the stuff I do with a football club in the UK, they get like raw data off the they get raw data off the GPS unit in real time, and then that goes into their um, live reporting. So these things are feasible to do, and it's just having people in the company that are smart enough to know how to do it, um, and I guess where the value from these companies versus the snake oil salesmen are. So
Mm.
that's the real key, is like understanding what you want out of it. And sometimes I guess you don't know what you don't know, do you? So you don't know what the possibilities are. Um, so I think if you can understand those things, and again, it's just talking to people, isn't it, and doing your own research, and understanding what you want to get out of your training, and if there's ways that you can do that, and using AI or generative AI models to do those sorts of things, I think is where people are going to go moving forward. And yeah, trying to integrate data across organization so that it's not siloed with performance, with GPS, with strength stuff, with even the salary caps and the list management guys. Like, how do they all talk to each other? And then you can start to potentially use some predictive modeling to sort
Yeah.
of model where you should be. And people have been doing this, some good podcasts out there on like sports analytics and Moneyball type stuff, and people have been doing them for a long period of time. And I think now that we have more data, there's more features within each of these models. You can then start to make some good predictions. But I think we're still a long way off, like having the ability to predict someone's going to have a hamstring strain injury. And
Yeah, it's so complex.
I
Yeah.
don't know if we'll ever get there. Like, yeah, we can collect sleep data now. You can tell if someone's fatigued, and being able to pull them all together is going to be really important to make more informed decisions. But I don't know if we're ever going to be at a point where we can predict someone's injury risk.
Mm. You
Because
can see where it could easily get, it's a rabbit hole, but like you talked about the movement mechanics and how that changes with
mm,
injury. So fatigue, how that changes. Corky in the left calf, what does that do to their movements?
yeah,
Spikes in loading, wellness that you talked about. So at
yeah,
least it can ease the sports science and performance medical department's sort of analysis and looking across the numbers and more just focus on just, okay, what do we do with this information when it alerts? Oh, yep, last time this
yeah,
player was going through this sort of stuff, it got, they did an Achilles or whatever. It doesn't mean it's going to happen again when
yeah,
they face that.
yeah.
But
And I think that's where we need to get to, is like, rather than just collecting gross total distance metrics, which are useful for a sport like middle distance running, but not particularly useful for a sport like AFL or rugby league, because
mm,
they're not running at a constant speed. They're not doing it in a straight line. They're not doing it. They're doing it getting up and down off the ground. So total distance really tells us nothing. So it's like, how can we use some of the the data that's already there. So yeah, using the IMU better to maybe get out gait characteristics, so contact times, left and rights, stride frequency, stride length, left and rights, and then you can start to see, oh, maybe something is going on here. And some of Ben Horsley's work and Laura's work has sort of highlighted that you can capture these things. It's just now like, how do we make it actually more user friendly so that the practitioner can get it on the fly? I think is where we need to get to. And yeah, like I said before, with computer vision tracking, getting context in there as well. So what were they doing? Were they going down and picking up a ball off the ground whilst they're running at 4.5 meters a second? And they and then you can start to piece together things a bit better. So I think we need to get better at collecting the data that's important, but also understanding what is important. And there's always going to be things there that you can't measure that particularly easily, because yeah, you've got a group of 40 odd players, maybe all at different, all move differently, and all have different strength levels and fatigue levels, and you're stressing different tissue types because this guy moved in this way during this drill and based on his position, and therefore that we know that tissue type is going to take longer to recover based on the work that he did during that session. So yeah, maybe when he does this high speed session the next day, like he's at more risk, but we can't capture that information yet, and I don't know if we ever will. But if we can, maybe start to get some of these pose recognition, some of these gait characteristics out in the mainstream, then they may be able to provide. And again, if we can, like VuMotion, can you get that stuff out there so it's more readily accessible on the fly for practitioners? I think they can be useful. But again, like the old, you only get out what you put in. So if you put in rubbish, data that's unreliable, data that's not valid, you're going to get rubbish out. So we need to be making sure that, and that comes down to the human again, like collecting the data properly. If you're doing jumps on a force platform, making sure you're doing it consistently before training, same time of day, same protocol, shoes on, shoes off, hands on hips, hands off hips, just making sure those things are all done precisely so that when you actually come to make a decision off that data, you can trust that it's done right. So all those things that I guess are down to the human to be able to do, and but making sure the player understands why they're doing it, and that comes down to your human interaction with the person. So those things are gonna, I guess, still be king moving forward, but yeah, practitioners need to be understanding how they can use AI within their work to make them more efficient, I think.
Yeah, I think it was well put. I can't remember who said it, but around the threat of AI, rather than seeing it as taking a job, there's still a lot of value for the human, like you've touched on throughout the whole episode. But perhaps you will lose your job to someone that embraces AI and uses it as a tool, opposed to someone
Yeah,
that doesn't. And that's
yeah,
probably the way to look at it. No,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
there's
It's
no
here to
doubt.
stay for sure, and
Yeah.
and yeah, that's it.
What about the tactical, technical side of things? So enhancing learning. You've talked about like meetings, how concise everyone learns differently, learning styles, but yeah, how to sort of make sure that when players are leaving the room that they understand the game model and game plan for that week. Have you heard of coaches adapting it for that sort of space or?
I mean, I don't know in particular. That's not really my space, but I can sort of foresee, like, if you can have a computer vision of a team, um, and some of the sports like the Premier League, for example, they get second spectrum data, which is optical tracking of the opposition. So you can go in there and look exactly how Man United or Arsenal play. So you can use that information to then, and I think we will get to a point where we know, like, okay, if you run, let's say it's rugby league example, if you run this block shape this number of times against defenders in these positions, you're going to score X number of times. And then it might be like, okay, this is our perfect block shape. And we can use, imagine you've got like, this is the vision from the weekend of what we did and why we didn't score a try. We overlaid what the perfect scenario is. How does that actually translate to I guess winning or scoring that play that we didn't score off? So I can see it having implications there. but as long as it's still, and there's been some like VR stuff, but I don't like VR. I don't know if it's at a place yet where it can um, be real enough to then be representative and then translate to actually on-field performance. It may be useful in spaces where the player can't train.
Yep.
Um,
Concussion early on.
yeah, injury, concussion, and you're using VR to try and keep them, I don't know, switched on maybe. But
The
I don't.
NFL using that with their set plays.
Yeah, I think they do, and again, I haven't seen how like immersive it can be. I know there's
Mhm.
this, yeah, like immersive environments that you can go into, and whether that is going to be, or like coaching things like the tackle, where you don't want to expose someone to a load of tackles in training. Like if you can we use VR to augment some of that stuff, and you still need to do the actual body on body contact, but can we do some stuff where they're in terms of particularly from a technique point of view, um, during
Maybe able to
early
get direct feedback as well.
yeah, potentially. Like, so I think it does have some application there, but again, I don't think it'll ever um, replace the real thing.
Mhm, mhm.
But yeah, I think if you can using computer vision in those spaces to do some tactical analysis of the opposition, I think is going to be useful moving forward.
Yep, yep, yep. Mind for your time, mate. So we'll wrap it up. But like you said, we could probably spend hours on this all day. I guess
Yes.
for the future workflow, where do you feel AI is going? And then maybe if we wrap it up with a couple practical tips for strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists working in sport. Like you've mentioned, Copilot. I think I'm a ChatGPT membership, so I'll be looking at Copilot because I think privacy is pretty important. So that's something straight away, a tangible tip for myself to take from this episode. But yeah, a couple of things maybe for those that have dabbled with it but want to dive a little bit deeper and keep up to speed.
Yeah, I think looking at these like agents, creating your own agent, I think is going to be the big thing moving forward. So yeah, that agentic AI. But I think even just starting off with simple things, like think of a job that you do not like doing, but you have to do it every single day, checking
Yeah,
your emails or prepping for the week. Like AI can do that really well. Or summarizing a research paper that you don't have time to read. Always tell everyone to read all the research paper because that's how you learn the most. Um, but still, like understanding how, like getting up to date on the current research in this area, like what can I be doing? And AI does a really good job of doing that. Depending on what level of membership you got from ChatGPT, you can upload PDFs. And again, if you got like a enterprise copilot through work, it can just go to these. If as long as it's a OneDrive folder, it can just go to that folder if you tell it to. And again, you can run that on a schedule. So every 4 weeks, give me the most up to date research um, in this space, and then you can download the PDFs, put them into this folder, then summarize those PDFs for me. Um, yeah, creating agents so it can so that they can process workflows for you. I think that's probably going to be the big thing in sport for practitioners that are dealing with data and dealing with reporting will be how that AI um, facilitates that. And I also think like live insights might be a way that we go, and whether that's things that these like catapult and stat sports are working on, to have like AI assistance within sessions to flag players so that you're not having to check 40 odd players on a list. It can tell you what people have done. I think that is going to be useful going forward. Um, and yeah, I really do think like pose recognition, getting some more discrete variables that are important for movement and potentially injury risk, moving forward is going to be really key, I think, and useful. But always be mindful of people that say they're going to solve all your injury woes and be able to predict injuries. I don't know if we're at that point yet. And again, just being like when you collect the data, make sure you collect it well because
yeah,
that's the overarching and overriding thing that matters. If you collect bad data, then you'll get bad insights. and yeah, just thinking about how can this free up my time to be more forward facing and interactive and with other staff and with players.
Fantastic. I appreciate it, mate. Some great tips there, and I've got a few pages of notes. No doubt the listeners do as well. For those that have any follow-up questions, where's the best place to get in contact?
You can track me down on LinkedIn, or just send me an email. Is probably the best way. Just richard.johnston at acu.edu.au. That's probably the best place, or LinkedIn. That's where you got a hold of me, Jack. So I do check it. So yeah, LinkedIn or just via email, probably.
I'll add the links to the show notes for those able to not access it straight away. Maybe you're driving, and it was the ASC for roadmap policies. Was that right? The
Yeah,
ASC
yeah.
website. Yeah, I'll
I'll
add
I'll
that in
shoot
as well.
I'll shoot you through. I'll send it
Ah,
through
cool.
via email, and you can put it on. Yep.
Yeah, we could no, appreciate it. And for these last few questions, a little bit off topic, but work-life pet peeves, anything that sort of fires you up?
Admin again. Like I really, I work in an organization where there's lots of admin and lots of things that can be automated. And I think like again, like if you're working in a space where like automation is like that is key. Like how do you limit the human touch points here of something that takes you away from your job? So admin annoys me,
Yep, yep.
particularly when it could be streamlined. The kids not listening would be from life, but that's.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not alone there. What about a favorite way to spend a day off?
Um, I love riding my bike actually. When I'd stopped playing rugby through a back injury, and then so I can't do a load of running, so I ride my bike a lot. Yeah, so that's probably my number one thing to do. I do enjoy a beer as well, so those are the two.
Dangerous combo. What about this could be interesting. One opinion or belief that you hold that goes against mainstream thinking or challenges popular consensus.
Oh, that is a very hard question. I don't know if it's necessarily an opinion or belief, but I'd always just challenge people to be critical about everything that they see. Everything that you comes across your desk, just think about it critically. Like, is this actually true? And even your own beliefs, like challenge your own beliefs and always like lean into what you don't think is going to be true, I think is really key. Because obviously we can get comfy in our own biases and within our organization, and you end up in this echo chamber of people thinking the same as you. So that's probably one thing. Is just like challenging your own beliefs. I think is really key moving forward for anyone in any walk of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And what about something you're excited about for the rest of the year? Obviously, middle of February for
Yeah, I know.
2026. Big
Um,
year ahead.
yeah, we got this concussion grant starting. Actually, looking at well, there's a new type of headgear out there that may be able to reduce concussion incidents. So we won a grant for that last year. So that's probably going to be a big bit of work moving forward for the next few months. And then just sort of supporting the PhD students. We've got a new one who's going to be starting at Collingwood Football Club. We've got a guy at the Broncos who's going to be finishing up, so just supporting them through the last little bits of their PhD journey, and then the one at Collingwood that's going to be starting. They're always sort of exciting. You have particularly when they start up because get to have some really good conversations about with practitioners about problems that they have and how you can use research and data to answer those problems or try and answer them. And those are always that's the most fun for me. I sit up here in a university, but yeah, chatting to practitioners who actually have problems and think about how those problems can be answered is that's the most fun for my job. So yeah, any of those conversations are always welcomed across the year.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, well, hopefully this podcast facilitates a few more questions for you, mate. But really appreciate you jumping on. And yeah, thanks for all the insights. You came well recommended and lived up to the hope, mate. I was pretty excited for this one. And no doubt the listeners will be as well. Our next live episode for those tuning in will be with Dan Lawson, which will be 11 a.m. next Wednesday. And if you want to listen to this episode, if you've just tuned in with Rich, make sure to wind it back to the start. You can find it on our YouTube channel. Thanks, guys.